Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Weekly Brief. I'm Robbie Feinberg. I'm the Director of Communications and Government Relations for the Maine School Management Association, and I am here to give you a relatively quick update on where things currently stand in the legislative process. It is June 12th right now. We have just about a week left in the legislative session. And things are moving incredibly quickly. There's still a huge amount of uncertainty. There's dozens and dozens of bills that are still being reported out by committees. And then when they report out, they are quickly going to the House and Senate. So that means things are changing very quickly. What is probably most likely is that I'm about to give you some information. Within a day or so, that information may be out of date. Things are moving that quickly that bills are just quickly going so quickly between houses. But I'm here to give you as much information as I can, hopefully a little bit of good news, and then what you can expect for the next week or so as the legislative session does wrap up. So let's start. I will share my screen. All right, and here we go. The weekly brief for June 12th, 2025. So what you need to know, we're going to take you through four big subjects, a few bills that we want to touch on, the latest on the appropriations process, where things stand there, and then what is left for the roughly week ahead in the legislative session. So let's start with the latest on the Part 2 budget. Now, as some background, there was a Part 1 budget. This was what was deemed the continuing services budget, and the legislature passed this a few months ago, and the basic idea behind this was to be what they called a baseline budget, basically to continue the basic government services for the next 2 years. It was kind of described as the way of keeping the lights on. One of the things that was included in that original budget was 55% education funding for the next 2 years. So we are very thankful for the legislature for that and for keeping our local school districts, continuing to go, that they can rely on that funding continuing to come in from the state, even when we are facing some financial challenges. It is great to know that we do have that certainty in the years ahead. So that was in that Part 1 budget that already did pass. And now the Appropriations Committee is developing the Part 2 budget, basically looking at whatever money is left over, which is not all that much, but looking at that and then seeing what they will fund. They're currently kind of going through the governor's budget proposal line by line, deciding what will be in that Part 2 budget, what they will take out of that budget, and then the goal is to eventually vote on that probably over the next few days. We got some good news this week when it comes to that Part 2 budget. So one of the biggest issues that we have been focused on is that there's about $6 million that the state still needs to fund for the next 2 years to continue to provide universal school meals. We know that this program has been so important for our schools, for our students, our families across the state, but there was still an extra $6 million that was needed to basically fill in a gap in that universal school meals for the next 2 years. We were really pleased that in a 9-2 vote in committee this week, the Appropriations Committee did vote to include that money in the universal school meals. This was a really encouraging sign to see. It doesn't guarantee everything. There are going to be several votes still left. There will ultimately be a final vote on whatever does come out of the budget. There are going to be House votes and Senate votes, and then it'll go to the governor. So there is a whole lot that is left, but we are really encouraged by this. Another piece that we did want to highlight is that the committee actually also voted to include specific language. This was language actually from a bill that is in that's currently kind of making its way through the legislative process, LD 577. We've talked about this bill. Basically, what this bill does and what the language that would now be included in the budget would do is it would seek to maximize federal funding. So it basically would say that if your school is eligible for a federal match, a program like the community eligibility provision, if you're eligible for that, then you must work to get as much federal funding as possible, and the DOE will help you and work to get you as much federal funding as possible through that process. We're really encouraged by that. This really would help to set up our state well for the next few years, ensuring that we are maximizing federal funding for school meals, which ensures that our state still is able to continue to provide universal school school meals, but to do so with as much help from the federal government as possible. So again, there are still several votes left in this process, but we were really encouraged by this, and we really do hope to see this passed in the next week or so, I guess, because that's all that's left in the legislative process. In terms of some other bills that we wanted to touch on, so one is LD 1103. This is a bill around unallocated fund balances that we have been pushing all session. This bill is actually now officially a law. This bill will enable going forward your school district to be able to carry forward 9% in its budget in that unallocated fund balance. This is a big deal for schools. It is a big deal for financial flexibility, ensuring that our schools are able to properly weather uncertainty, weather financial instability in the months and the years ahead. This number was set to go down to 5% at the end of the fiscal year. And so this will ensure that that 9% number does continue going forward, and there's no sunset anymore. So this should just mean that schools will have that 9% number going forward. This bill really was, incredibly bipartisan. We were really pleased to see this. It got a 12-1 vote in committee. There was no debate at all on it in the House or the Senate, and it just flew right to the governor's desk and is now law. So we're really pleased about that. We're also closely watching LD 1248. This was a bill around student behavior that we really worked well with several other groups on. And this bill will make it easier and will allow our educators and our schools to be able to more quickly take action when a student is really acting out. It kind of allows for more escorting of a student potentially out of a room, something like that. They're very small, common sense tweaks, but they will enable us to be able to deal with rising student dangerous behaviors. And that's a really encouraging sign. This is a bill that we have been in very strong support of. This amended version did make it through the House and the Senate. It was got a 12-1 vote in the Education Committee as well. So now it sits on the governor's desk, and we are hoping that the governor will sign that bill within the next few days. We will keep you in touch as we know what does come from that bill over the next few days. But again, two pieces of encouraging news, two pieces of legislation that we really have focused on, and it's really great to see that those are moving quickly through the House and the Senate and ultimately to the governor's desk. So what is left in the legislature? So we wanted to touch on, we have just a few things left that we wanted to talk about. So number one is a bill, LD 1719. This is a bill around student transfers. And specifically, this bill was created partially as a result, actually, of real conversations between the State Board of Education and superintendents really working to try to improve this process, to make it more transparent, to make it more communicative, to really make it a better process across the state so that we have less conflict in this process. There isn't much conflict right now. We have superintendents we know who do a really terrific job in terms of assessing if a student does need to go to a different district for whatever reason, and we're really working to carefully consider these requests. We know that there are about 4,000 of these student transfers all across the state, but this bill seeks to make targeted changes that will really improve this process for everyone, for schools, for parents, for the State Board of Education. So we are really hoping that this bill is able to make it through. This bill has yet to be heard in the House and Senate. This is because it only took until actually Wednesday, the 11th, for this bill actually to get finally reported out by committee. That's for there to be kind of final language from the Education Committee. So we expect this bill to really move its way through the House and the Senate pretty quickly over the next few days. And this is one of the biggest bills we're watching. Honestly, by the time you see this, this bill may have already made its way through different houses. We might already know a whole lot more about this, but this is one bill that we are very closely watching in the days ahead. Then the other big question is what will be funded? So we talked about that part two budget as well. That's the kind of, the second part of the budget that the Appropriations Committee in Maine is currently working through. And we will see what does come of that. But then once that part two budget is done, then there will be a likely small amount of money left over to fund all of the other bills on the appropriations table. And right now, as we speak, there are already more than 100 bills on the appropriations table. So there's going to be a lot of different bills fighting for a very small amount of funding. So that really raises the question of what is going to get funded, if anything, what will come off of that table in the days ahead. Honestly, we are not really sure what will come of that, but it likely means that if a bill does need a lot of money and is kind of waiting on that appropriations table to see if it will get funded, it may not necessarily have a great chance of passing or kind of getting to the governor's desk if it does need that amount of funding. Obviously, we will see in the days ahead what does come, but that is a big question of what actually will get funding from the state and from the legislature in the days ahead. So we will just kind of end there. That's kind of where we're at right now, but we will expect it to have lots more to share next week. The legislature is expected to do a lot more work. They may be actually meeting over the weekend to try to get all of their work done by the 18th. We will hopefully have plenty to share with you within about a week or so. Details on the budget, details on where all of these bills have ended up. So we will have plenty more to share with you in the days ahead. But for now, we just like to say thank you, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much.